Beware of the individual who says, hey, I'm a good dude. Beware of the individual who goes to a medium security facility or a low or a camp, whatever, and talks about how he's done all this time in the USPs and pretends he was all that just because he was in a maximum security facility. Here's a story of one of these self-proclaimed good dudes who was in a pen. Hello, welcome to Convict Inc. I'm your host, Robert Rosso. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so. If you have subscribed, I want to thank you. If you have not subscribed, I would hope that you do. If you like this video, share it with your friends, enemies, neighbors, etc. Back here last year, 2024, I did a 14-month violation off a federal prison sentence that originally started with life without parole. It was reduced to 25 years, which kicked me out. I had 10 years paper to begin with, and that 10 years paper went down to 3 years, which went down to a violation, which went down to me not being on paper anymore. I was originally started at the Washington County Detention Center. I ended up at Cimarron, which is a private prison, for a few months. And then I made my way to FMC Butner for cancer treatment, recurring bladder cancer. FMC Butner, for those of you that do not know, has a cancer ward. Cancer ward is on the 4th floor. It is a prison hospital. If you really put yourself in the mind frame of walking into a hospital, that's what it's like living on the 4th floor. It has a non-prison feel when you, on the first look at it. The floors are actually set up like hospital rooms, nurses' stations, and all that stuff. And two of the wings on the 4th floor. For the purpose of the story, let's forget about the rest of the hospital for a second. I'm talking about the cancer ward. Guys that come in from different prisons don't really know what to make of Butner when they first get there. And I was one of those people back in the day. You step into like a Twilight Zone. It does not have a prison feel whatsoever. It's actually a place that if you've been doing time, you can decompress because there is no prison politics. Well, there kind of is, but not in the sense of the violence aspect necessarily, okay? So you'll get, every once in a while, you'll get a guy who is what I would say too hard for the yard or too hard for the hospital. He comes in kind of high strung, in your face, chest out, and wants everybody to know that he was just in a penitentiary. He just came from Pollack. Like that was like everybody should stop because a person comes from a USP, and should stop because Pollack is supposed to be so bad and scary. So typically when these individuals come in and you've been in prison for a while, you just kind of let it go. Me, I kind of let it go. The guy was 40, I considered him a kid. Anybody 54 and under, I consider a kid, okay? So, but actually, to be honest, a lot of us that have done time in prison, our growth is stunted, our maturity growth is stunted, and me included, and this individual was stunted. His growth was stunted dramatically, okay? All right, I'm gonna call him Sidestep, and I think I've talked about him in a video. Actually, this video kind of seems familiar, but anyway, if I did it before and I have cases of early stage dementia, there's a different angle on it anyway. Okay, so Sidestep comes in, introduces himself as a good dude, a good white dude. Let me put that out there. Flags are up. I'm a good white dude. Really what he's saying, when somebody says that, what they're saying is, I'm a big piece of shit, okay? 9 times out of 10. If somebody says, hey bro, my name's Rob, I'm a good dude. No, Rob, you're a big piece of shit, is what people should automatically think. Somebody comes in, yeah man, I just came out of the pen, usually scared. Somebody that has to identify themselves as a good dude is a piece of shit. Somebody that usually has to identify themselves as somebody that just came from the penitentiary, scared. Inside they're scared, insecure with themselves. Very insecure with themselves, okay? So, what I call them? Sidestep. Sidestep is put in with a sex offender, okay? Now, let me explain something to everybody who has been in the joint and said, I would never do that, because we'll get a lot of those guys. Butner FMC don't play, they don't care, okay? They're going to put you in a room, and if you want to buck and cry about it, which I did, if you want to buck and cry about it, normally what happens is they'll bring you to the hole. They'll say, okay, you're refusing medical treatment. Okay, that's how they do it. So if you don't want to go to a cell with somebody that you don't want to be with and you refuse, you can actually be called for refusing medical treatment. I can't actually say that I've saw that happen, but there's cases of people that won't go in cells that I don't know what happened to them, okay? So in this case, what's happened in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, it's become the Federal Bureau of Sex Offenders, okay? And there's going to be more and more of this. Back in the day when going back to the 80s and 90s, you had bank robbers, organized crime bosses when the mob was real, gang leaders, motorcycle gangs, bank robbers, I just said that, white collar criminals, Falcon and the Snowman types. And then came the late 80s and 90s, and you had the crack epidemic, and you had the influx of a lot of drug offenders. When I was in the BOP, I got there in 98, I went down in 97, lots and lots of drug offenders, okay? So they went crazy with the drug laws. Now they're going crazy with the clicker laws. Good, bad, or indifferent, not here to judge that today. Now it's the clicker laws. Internet porn, any pervert out there that wants to look at somebody under 18 can get clipped for an internet porn charge, and it depends on the jurisdiction and depends on the person behind the laptop who they want to catch and what they want to do. So what's happened now is you have a lot of these sex offenders are in the hospital with cancer. Lots of them, actually. Lots. So people will be happy to hear that. Except you're paying for it with your tax dollars. Maybe you're not too happy to hear that. So Sidestep comes in and it's put in, and what kind of a bug do I have flying today in here? Sidestep comes in and he comes in, I'm from a pen, I'm a good dude, and the good dude from the pen went into a cell with the sex offender and did nothing. Which that's fine, I'm kind of making a little joke, but he didn't do anything. So he stuck there for about 2 weeks, not happy. Stayed in a TV room on 4A wing, didn't come out and venture with the other Goodwoods, probably because he was embarrassed for being in the cell with the sex offender and coming in making so much noise about how I'm coming from a pen, I'm sure. My cellie Jeff was transferred and I needed a cellie, and I'm here to tell you that they would put a sex offender, the next person that's coming to the door is going with you. They did separate by race. Blacks didn't live with blacks, whites didn't live with whites, Mexicans stayed with Mexicans. That's how Mexicans and whites stay together, but whatever. That's how they roll, okay? So not wanting to have to deal with the BS of the sex offender, getting a cellie for a sex offender, I tell Sidestep, hey bro, move in. I don't care about his rah-rah stuff, okay? I don't care. Well, boy did I care afterwards. So he moves into the cell with me, says that he used to do deuce, that doesn't do deuce anymore. That is K2 for you that don't know. I am here to tell you, if I would have known that he did K2, I would have probably chose a sex offender over him. People that do K2 in prison, and I'm somebody that has used substances in prison is what I meant, and has had substance abuse issues in prison is what I was trying to say. And I wasn't on K2. So maybe I feel like I'm better than everybody else because whatever, I don't know. K2, they you go into comas, you flop around on the floor, you smoke it and you flop on the floor. It doesn't really sound fun. Then again, I've done H in the past where I used to do it and puke, and that was good to me, so maybe I look like the dumbass, who knows. But K2 is a menace in the prison systems. It's a plague. It's horrible, okay? He came in the cell. I hooked him up. I had a lot of extra stuff. And the first thing I noticed is he wasn't very grateful. He felt entitled to it, which kind of pissed me off a little bit, but whatever. Still, I didn't care. And then he comes back after lockup and says, hey bro, you know, I smoke a little deuce every now and then. You don't just smoke a little deuce every now and then. That's not how it works, okay? So the guy who smoked a little deuce every now and then takes a hit and goes on his bed and starts screaming that there's demons getting him, okay? That was my first experience with him the first night. Second, he woke up the next day, asked me what he'd done, apologized, said time and time again how he's not a deuce head and this and that. I knew exactly what he was at that point. And second night, he goes down again. This time he flops on the floor for a while, gets up, screams for demons. Demons are getting him in his bed. And I'm telling you, the guy, it looked like there was people actually grabbing him in his sleep. It was a trip. Third day, a friend comes to me and says, hey, so-and-so's moving tomorrow, or leaving, and this guy Chase needs a cellie. I jumped on it. I jumped. Normally I don't let people run me out of a cell, and I didn't get run out of a cell. He was actually pissed that I moved, to be honest. I jumped on it. Actually, and it was a cell in front of a TV, so I scored all the way around, and on C-Wing, where I was watching TV every day anyway. So I scored all the way around. Sidestep was pissed because he knew what time it was. He knew that his chances of getting a cellie were great. The day after I moved, here he comes. Now, I should add here that he befriended a guy by the name of Jimmy. I had no idea who Jimmy was, and he would come over to Seaside, talk about Jimmy. Nobody knew who this Jimmy cat was, okay? Jimmy ended up being an arsonist who was really wealthy from Baltimore, who cried innocent, who was guiltier than sin, had cancer, and quite a bit of money. Jimmy was feeding Sidestep every day. So the good dude Jimmy was a good dude in Sidestep's mind because he gave him whatever he wanted, including money to get deuce, okay? So Jimmy was okay, I like Jimmy. Me and Jimmy got along. I should put that out there. But Jimmy was an arrogant prick who was condescending, talked down to people at times, and ended up living with that cop from Baltimore that I did a video about. He was it was during lockup, right before count time, everybody rushes to the ice machines, and that's in prison everywhere, okay? To put, people will make sandwiches, whatever, just to have stuff cold on ice. Jimmy went to the ice machine, and there was a guy there. He was a 30-year-old from DC. His name was White Boy. He wasn't white. They called him White Boy. And White Boy told Jimmy not to get in the ice because his cup's there and he was waiting for the next ice to drop. Jimmy got mouthy, pushed White Boy out of the way, and White Boy dropped Jimmy. One punch. The next day, after that happened, Jimmy tells Sidestep about this. Sidestep, out of his mind that a black guy hit a white guy, wasn't white Greek. That a white guy got hit by a black guy, comes to the white guys, including myself. So the guys I was with had been in prison for a while. I've known for a long time, okay? So the little group that I hung out in the TV room I was with, we were all veterans, sad to say, but true. And came to us and was talking about how White Boy dropped Jimmy. And we looked at him. We said, okay, we got to go do something about this, man. I said, for what? For what? Because a black dude hit a white dude. We're in prison. What did Jimmy do to White Boy? Because White Boy, he was an idiot, but White Boy was an idiot to the right people, not the wrong ones. He knew what time it was. Okay, so Sidestep gets pissed at all of us. I can't believe you all been in pen and done this much time. If we were in Pollack, they call it USP Pollack. If we were in Pollack, this shit wouldn't happen. I said, bro, you're in a hospital. You're in a hospital. You're not in Pollack anymore. Yeah, but you guys have all been in the pen, man. Da-da-da-da. Yeah, but you're at the FMC now. Okay, go handle it. Yeah, but I'm just a white guy starting. Man, I don't want to start racial issue. You're not going to start a racial issue. The black dudes ain't going to buck. They don't care. Go beat up the guy who beat up your friend. Go ahead. Go jump on him. Next thing you know, he goes and gets a knife. Okay, makeshift weapon. It was actually a decent one. Running around the hospital like this with his hand down his pants, like he's holding something, to let people understand that he had a weapon. Okay. He goes and approaches white boy, gets him out of bed and says, "Hey man, you can't be doing that," or something like that. And white boy, quote, white boy said, "White boy, get the fuck out of my cell phone, I beat your ass." Now Sidestep don't know what the hell to do, because he's a good white dude who came from a pen and was portraying himself to be all that and had a knife and just got punked out of guy's cell. He ends up getting an old man named Bill, who he woke up. Bill gets all hot and bothered about the situation. And Bill goes and puts white boy on check, and white boy, this black guy, white boy on check, and white boy and Bill were friends. So at the end of the day, what happens is people find out, that Jimmy is a dark-skinned Puerto Rican. Now, I understand that people in this that watch this don't understand the difference between Italians in prison and whites in prison, or Portuguese in prison and whites in prison, or whatever the deal is, okay? There can be people that are Portuguese that run white. There can be people that are Italian that run white. Guys from New York, from upstate, might typically run white. New York guys from that area, like from New York City, are gonna run Italian if they're Italian. Okay, it's just it's all weird, and it depends on the prison, which prison you're at. There's all kinds of factors. Jimmy was a Greek. Okay, spoke Greek. Was a Greek, dark-skinned Greek, not Portuguese. Greek guy. About my age. Like I said, he was arrogant as hell, and come to find out, it was all Jimmy's fault. So white boy wanted to get down and get himself in a wreck, mess himself up from cancer treatment for a guy that really just buys him, and wanted to get everybody else right, and was upset, really talking bad about us. Well, he went so far and he got put in check, but he was talking bad like we were in the wrong for not jumping. I will say that if this was a normal prison, it's not the FMC situation, it could have been different, okay? Until we saw who Jimmy was, and then we would have washed our hands with it because we didn't run white. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. Now, let's carry on with Sidestep. Sidestep and my friend Gary get into an argument. They may or may not have chased each other around the hospital with weapons for a while, and neither one of them did anything. And Sidestep gets ostracized. Not just for that. Come to find out that his good dude Jimmy, who he became a cellie with after a while, he was stealing and robbing from. Also, good dude Jimmy was sending him $100 a week for commissary. Actually $100 3 times a month. So the good dude who was sending him money that he was willing to get in a fight for started robbing. Oh, by the way, he was a bad deuce head. Caught him robbing from other people. Great guitar player. I will say that the guy was a fantastic guitar player. Let's see, I did a competition where I sang. He played the guitar and won something. Won it. We used to have what's a talent show contest and all that. That's what I'm trying to say. But the moral of the story is this. I said it before and I'm going to say it again. If you come into prison and you have to say you're a good white dude, you're actually a piece of shit. If you ever go to any other prison, if you've been to a USP before, now it's common. Okay, before I say this, if you've been to a USP before, and then you go to a low level security, and you talk about how things are in the pen, if this wouldn't happen if we were in the pen, they're usually scared and they're insecure with themselves. That's what usually happens in prison. So beware of the good white dude and beware of the guy that always talks about the glory days in the penitentiary, if he's in an FCI or a medium or whatever. And by the way, people, yes, I would rather have been in Leavenworth and Lewisburg than other prisons that I was in. They were good at the time. But in general, if you want to stay in a USP and you talk about the respect in the USP and how the USP times better, you're probably a moron. You probably are, okay? So you need to rethink your life if you're in prison or if you go to prison. By the way, a lot of guys in prison are watching this now. I'm getting messages from all the time. If you're trying to convince yourself that it's better in a pin than an FCI, you're not probably you are a moron. Yes, you might have to tuck your shirt in. Yes, you might have to make your bed up. Okay. Okay. Just saying. Take care.